Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Down in the Valley. My name is Edson Ochoa. I am your host for this special podcast today, Thursday, the 20th of September, 5 days away from September 25th. That is a very special day, and that is my birthday. I don't know why I'm saying this. I don't know. It's just been kind of weird. Accompanying today is with me is our co-host, Jacob Young. Jacob, how are you doing?
Really well. Looking forward to talk some RGVFC soccer and some RGV soccer as well. So this should be an exciting podcast for sure tonight.
Oh, definitely. I think it's really a good idea for people to understand, because I know there's a lot of people that say, well, we kind of want to forget about everything that happened, or people that literally had no idea about the past when it came to soccer in the Rio Grande Valley. And I think, like I said, it's something that'll be interesting for people to kind of understand, our past, with our two previous USL PDL teams that were pretty much just, I guess you can say, kind of flash in a pan kind of thing. Cisco, evening, how are you doing? Good evening to you as well. So there's a lot to talk about today. Obviously with the Toros as well, because let's face it, we knew this time was coming. The Toros are out of the playoffs, officially out of the playoffs. And this was something that was just pretty much being delayed by, for example, just a couple of results that we were getting, as well as, for example, teams that were, in the playoffs, in playoff stages, actually, losing some points. And we kind of had this whole idea, like maybe there's a mathematical possibility that the Toros would be able to make it to the playoffs. But Saturday's result against the Colorado Switchbacks pretty much sealed the deal that we are not going to make it to the USL playoffs for 2018.
Yeah, for sure. But it that game, yes, of course, the Toros got down early in that match, but which is what you want to see in a team that obviously won't make the USL playoffs that were really mathematically or not mathematically out of it, but just showed that they were out of it since August, basically,
Mm-hmm.
was game. We talked about it last week. Up a lot higher on altitude, a lot thinner air, things like that. You just need to be well rested in other things.
Mm-hmm.
Really, and they showed that they could tie up the game, and it proved a lot of what we still have a fight. No matter if we're out of the playoffs or not, we still got fight for the rest of the season. So that was perfect.
So just to go ahead and give you a little something for y'all to look at for yesterday's Generation Orange um, show, we actually had AJ De La Garza on last night on Generation Orange, and he talked a little bit about the match against Colorado Springs, and he did mention that yes, it was really hard for the players is with that they're having problems breathing. You know, sometimes they're grabbing in air, but he loved what he saw the fight in the team to not give up, and even with that against them, you know, they still fought on and tried to look for the equalizer, tried to look for the win, and they were, especially in the defense, you know, they were in pretty much a mentality is okay. They scored one, we better be sure that they don't score on us again, and I think it showed last Saturday. We saw the fight in this team. You know, and that's good. I think that's one of the positives that we see from this team, and that is something that Gerson Echeverry talked about this morning to RGVFC Media, was the fact that this team, you know, continues to fight on. They want to really represent our region, the Rio Grande Valley. They want to be someone who deserves being a representative of the Rio Grande Valley the moment they put that shirt on and they jump on the field. Um, and I think the players are starting to understand this. They're starting to understand what it means to play for the Valley, what it means to be the Valley, and I really, really, really appreciate that from these players. This season, you can say, well, this was kind of like a trial season to see how these new players would gel. I mean, we talked about it in the past couple of weeks. This is a completely new team. There's a completely new roster, a completely new technical staff. There's going to be a lot of growing pains, and obviously we saw what was bad about this team. We also saw what's good on this team, and you cannot tell me that this organization is not working on fixing the bad to make it better for next season.
Not just making the bad go away, basically fixing it for next season. Those players, yes, we acquired Carlos Small not long ago. At least it just doesn't feel like we acquired him that long ago, which he has benefited from this team a ton. We've seen him actually grow as well as other players, Enriquez to even Nico Cordy and all these other players. Yes, I don't believe that Nico Cordy was Saturday, but
Actually, it was Michael Nelson who started.
yeah, exactly. So kind of my point there. And so we've seen these players that have grown be awesome.
I mean, I
Said
definitely
from the start of last season,
Mhm.
we really didn't have anyone at the end.
Yeah.
Just to have these people going into most likely next year is phenomenal.
Yeah, and we talked about that last week when Sean was on, where the fact is, last year we are like, okay, who's going to stay? This year, we're pretty confident that most of these players that played, unless the Dynamo do something weird, most of them are going to be staying for next season, which really does help with the continuity and continue building that chemistry of this team. If you all remember when we had the San Antonio after the San Antonio match, I said that's one of the things that I envy out of San Antonio. Is the fact is been able. It helps that they don't have a daddy club telling them what to do, but for the most part, they've held on with one coach. They've held on with a base of players. Sure, they've added and they've gotten rid of some pieces here or there, but it's not like one off season they got rid of the whole team and brought in new players. They've maintained that continuity, and you can see that for the most part when they play, you just see this connection between each of these teams. And if RGVFC continues to go down this path of just building up what you started the previous season, I think we might be looking at a team that maybe not win the USL Cup, but will actually fight for playoff spots.
Exactly. And I bet you that is exactly what Houston Dynamo wants to see is this team. Guess what? They're fighting for playoff spots. Sure, they're probably never going to win one because we take players away from them, but that's okay. As long as they're fighting for playoff spots, get more minutes besides getting more minutes with Houston. So that is most likely with, of course, how Houston's lineup is going to be for next year, with all of the players coming back from injury and going to be healthy, like AJ De La Garza, for example. Chris Seitz and Derek coming back. That just shows how much depth there's going to be. So there's going to be a lot of growing that those players can do. And of course, here's what Houston has to do. They've got to know but make sure to keep scouting throughout the season. So when we do take those players away, young players in to keep that line squad in a way going so that we can always have these key players, which is going to be amazing if that even happens.
So you kind of hint. Well, you mentioned it actually, and I really, now that you've mentioned it, since it's fresh in our memories, I want to get your takes on this whole Chris Seitz thing, because this comes as a complete surprise to me. That day that I saw the USL roster, I was expecting. I believe this was before. This was last. Wait, was it on Monday? I'm not. Or was it last week? But anyways, I was looking through the USL website because I was expecting to see Juan David Cabezas, according to reports, because reports here from Lester Gresh a couple of weeks ago said that you couldn't discard the opportunity that maybe Juan David Cabezas would get minutes at RGV. To my surprise, I look at the roster, the official USL roster that's on the USL website, and I don't see Juan David Cabezas, who turned out, played 45 minutes with the Dynamo on Saturday against Portland. But who I did see was the Dynamo's backup keeper, Chris Seitz. This was a keeper that was pretty much going to be the starter for the Houston Dynamo after the whole thing with Derek, and Willis was going to be the backup. Going into the season, Joe Willis takes the starting role, and Chris Seitz would play Open Cup. But after, I believe after the SKC match, we just stopped seeing him. We saw Joe Willis against LAFC in the Open Cup semifinals. So, what is your thought on Chris Seitz all of a sudden being with RGV?
I'm not shocked. Why? Because we kind of end up happening, I think. From what I will predict is we will see come back and starting keeper for sure. Why? Because in my opinion, there's just something about Tyler Derek that he has over Joe Willis, which isn't anything bad, but sometimes doesn't make those saves that Tyler Derek can make and pop right back up. Believe you me, they're both great goalkeepers, but that's what I see happening. for the 1-2 spot. And of course, yeah, Chris Seitz coming down. It is a bit of a shock, but it's just for his last chance if they're going to see if he actually stays. Because remember, right now, holding and Houston Dynamo are holding a ton of keepers. They've got to figure out which ones to let go and which ones to keep.
I think my biggest concern out of this, guys, let me know if you guys can actually hear me. But my biggest concern about this is, Chris Seitz is pretty, out of all the keepers, he's the one that's being paid the most. And now he's at RGV, which leads me to believe this might be something of this might be Chris Seitz telling the Dynamo, hey, right now, what I want to do is play. And if you guys are not going to get me minutes, obviously he's still under contract right now, and he can't say, oh, well, release me. But what Chris Seitz probably wants is playtime. And if he's not getting playtime in the Open Cup because Joe Willis is getting Open Cup and Liga and the MLS, and then you have Tyler Derrick that is looking to get back to the starting role, position as a keeper for the Dynamo, hold on. And so basically is, I think that it's just Chris Seitz telling them, hey, you know what, I want minutes. Like, he's one of those keepers that cannot stand not getting minutes and being on the bench. You can take this as a double-edged sword because a lot of people might see it, oh, well, he gave up on trying to contest Joe Willis for the Dynamo spot, and so he just wants to go with RGV because it'll be easier. But you have to look at it on the Chris Seitz point of view. I mean, he's getting paid to do nothing, and even though it might sound awesome to some people, for professional soccer players, that's the worst thing that can happen to you, because if you're not getting match minutes, you're not continuing to develop or keep your talent, on your heels. And if you're just sitting on the bench, then you start deteriorating faster. And so Cisco says, what happens in the U.S. Open Cup final might say a lot with how Dynamo are going into next season and with which keepers. That's an interesting take. If we see Derek on the bench and Willis as a starter, then that pretty much seals the deal that Chris Seitz is out by the end of next season. So he continues and he says they will have to juggle MLS play along with CCL play along with Open Cup. That is true as well. But knowing how the Dynamo run, Cisco, into trying to lowering salaries as much as possible, I really highly doubt that they'll want to keep Chris Seitz just because of the amount that they're paying him. And if Joe Willis has proven enough to be in MLS, and you can have Tyler Derrick in the U.S. or not in the U.S. Open Cup in CONCACAF, but we're getting ahead of ourselves because we still need to win the U.S. Open Cup this Wednesday against Philly. If we lose against Philly, then whatever we say about that, it pretty much makes no sense anymore. But if we win this Open Cup, and like I said, Joe Willis obviously is going to be the starter of the MLS. The way that it's been coming on right now, he's been starter of MLS, and you can have Tyler Derrick in Open Cup, or not Open Cup, in CONCACAF Champions League. Wouldn't it be better financial-wise for the Dynamo to say, we can put in Michael Nelson in Open Cup? Jacob?
Okay, so yeah, you bring up a great point. All the financial aspects of what you just said make complete sense. There's no reason for us to keep Chris Seitz if you obviously play, and we've got Nelson at backup, obviously, and Nico Cordy coming in as well.
Mm-hmm.
All of those, Joe and Tyler, financially reasonable than keeping Chris Seitz. Chris Seitz, yeah, I think this is his final chance, basically, with RGVFC if he were to start this Saturday or even next Saturday. That's where we have it at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, a lot of things could end up happening. I really do see this as being his final chance.
The thing about it is, so from what I've heard is that Chris Seitz chose the Dynamo because he wanted to stay in Texas. And if he does leave the Dynamo, you can say he left on bad terms with the FC Dallas fan base. Is Austin due to start in 2019? Cisco, that's still up in the air because of this whole... That's true, Cisco, but that is still up in the air due to the lawsuit that's going on in Ohio. Until we find out the verdict of what of that lawsuit in Columbus, then we will know if Austin FC is gonna be a for sure thing for 2019, or if Columbus stay over there in Ohio, the crew. It's a difficult decision, I know, for Chris Seitz, but Cisco, that is true. And I think if that does happen, if, let's say, Austin FC does happen in 2019, then you're looking at the probability that, I mean, he's going to be a starter there for sure, because I don't know how the finances in NMLS would do it, but I don't think it'd be very expensive for Austin to grab Chris Seitz, especially if the Dynamo and him mutually part ways. I believe that would make him a free agent.
Yeah, I believe that you are correct on that with the free agent. Now, of course, would not be shocked because I think by now, if he were to be mutually agree to part ways, we'll see who's really at fault there. But if he were to mutually agree to part ways, it makes him a free agent. But does he really want to continue playing soccer? Because, yeah, I bet you he probably does. Teams like Houston Dynamo, FC Dallas don't really want him at keeper. Who else will really want him at keeper then? Where I go and say he's probably done if Houston Dynamo were to let him go because he would want to.
I see your point in that, but take into consideration that financially for FC Austin, it'd be perfect to grab a free agent keeper, especially with somebody with the experience of Chris Seitz. Let's not forget that Chris Seitz is very experienced. The question here is that Joe Willis has proven to be... See, I can't even explain that because only Wilmer knows, but I think has something to do also with the connection that Joe Willis has on this team, on this city. And the fact is, Joe Willis, I think, has had better communication because he's been with Machado, he's been with Leonardo, he's been with Bees longer than Chris Seitz. So there's some better connection there. I think that also kind of falls into the reasons why maybe Coach Cabrera decided to go with Joe Willis instead of Chris Seitz. And I think it'd be a good opportunity for FC Austin to, if you're going to get a keeper on the cheap that can actually be a decent starter, why not Chris Seitz? And in the end, both would win because Chris Seitz would stay in Texas, and the FC Austin would not have to pay a transfer fee for another keeper.
Yeah, you do make a fantastic point there, but that's, of course, if that all happens. And from what it seems like Austin FC will have to wait another year. Yes, Austin FC has bought all the land and things like that. There's something about how poor the crew has been handled. They're still able to have a soccer team, which don't know why, because they cannot sell out a stadium. Yes, we have sold out more stadiums in the past years than. So that's my point on that, as in Austin FC should actually grab that team. They've had their chance. But obviously, that's way besides the point. We're talking about Chris Seitz, and if Chris Seitz were to go there, if everything were to be handled and Austin FC were to get a soccer team, which hopefully they do.
Cisco also brings up a good point. Cisco UD MVP fan of Down in the Valley. Let's just let you know that for sure because he's the only one right now. But he says, think about the expansion draft and how that might play out. He could be left unprotected. That is very true. Obviously, you have Tyler Derrick, because he's a homegrown, he's automatically protected.
Yeah.
But anyways, enough about Chris Seitz in the Dynamo perspective. What about in the RGV perspective? What do you think he would bring to the table if he does get sent down? Because remember, just because he is on the official roster does not necessarily mean that the Dynamo is actually going to send him down. Take a look at Charlie. Take a look at Malky. I mean, they were both.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. So, if he were sent down to RGV, what benefits do you see out of him?
He'd get to play. He'd get to knock off some rust that he's had, because I believe the last time that he was in goal for Houston Dynamo was,
I believe it was against SKC in the quarterfinal.
Quarterfinals, exactly. That was like May or June, so somewhere around that line. So he hasn't been in goal in a while. He's probably been practicing, yes, but he hasn't had a full game to. That would be probably what benefit he'd bring, as in off his own rust, and where Chris Seitz would actually be at for, yes, the Houston Dynamo perspective, but also in the RGV. Where is this man at? Where has this man been? Why wasn't he down here? Well, yes, of course, we had Tyler Derrick at goal. So that would be the thing to look out for, is he at right now? Why was he sent down to RGVFC? Questions after that game.
It is a lot of questions. But I think personally for me, what Chris Seitz would bring to the table is good. It's going to be pretty much another Tyler Derrick. Obviously, he's not. I don't think he's as talented in the position as Tyler Derrick, but he does bring a lot of experience. And I think if Chris Seitz is going to be here for from the longer term, compared to Tyler Derrick, I think it'd be helping out especially our defense. Continue to get their act together, try to minimize some mental lapses that happen, and continue to help develop Michael Nelson and Nico Corti and Matt Sanchez as they continue their development, because that's going to be another interesting thing in regards for next season with goalkeepers, and that's going to be RGV. We have three keepers. We barely use Matt Sanchez. I think that's going to be number one choice to kind of be let go after the season. And pretty much keep Michael Nelson and Nico Corti, and so that they continue to develop. Since we already have two up in the Dynamo, two very capable goalkeepers, so we can hopefully, unless another team comes in and grabs Nico Corti, from the USL, then I guess you can say we can expect those two to stay for next year. And I think they've done a tremendous job guarding our goal. I mean, just take a look at what Michael Nelson did last Saturday. Oh my, the only reason that the goal that they scored on us was that was just a beautiful kick. Like nobody would have, not even Tyler Derrick could have saved that. It was just perfectly placed in the upper 90 with enough and with a lot of curve. Michael Nelson was not going to get there, even though he wanted to. He could put on a Superman cap, and he still wouldn't have been able to get it. But other than that, did you see that? Did you see that play where it was like the 1-on-1, and the shot like hits him at the bottom of his arm, and it just goes like right next to the goal line. I saw that replay I was like, oh my God, like they just needed like one switchbacks defender to just tap it in, but it was like, and then there was a couple of one-on-one instances.
Yeah, I did witness that play, and as you were, I was freaking out too, and a bit disgusted right after that play because there's no reason for that to. Yeah, they're bad defense. But for the rest of the game, we were decent after that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you know, it was one of those mentalities where like, okay, they scored on us, but we're not going to let them score anymore. Cisco says Joe Willis is making $125,000 while Seitz is in at $155,000. It's a no-brainer. Definitely, Cisco. I think you can save a lot of salary money right there that can help you bring in a couple more players that you need. I guess some more depth in, especially in the midfield position. You can actually bring in. I think you can actually bring a decent midfielder that can be the replacement of Cabezas, or at least, you know, a player that will fight Cabezas for the spot for next year. But that's a Generation Orange topic. Let's get back to RGV. So the starting 11 for RGVFC against Colorado Springs, you had Michael Nelson on goal, like we said. I give that guy a 9. AJ De La Garza, and then Connor Donovan, Kyle Adams, Sheldon Sullivan. In the middle, you had Todd Warden and Nicolas Perea. You had Pablo Aguilar in front of them, Chuy Enriquez and Carlos Small on the wings, and Aldo Quintanilla as your striker. Out of these players, obviously, Nico Perea was the one that scored a goal, but we keep on coming back to this kid. But this guy's a wonder kid for the USO. He's just so, I think he's very what's the word I'm looking for? Undervalued. The fight in Chuy Enriquez, the tenacity, the quickness in his thoughts, to pretty much in his dribbling, you know, in that play, like he just fainted, like, or not fainted. He juked a Colorado Switchbacks defender and like totally left him like out of balance, and just kind of chipped it over to Nico Perea in the 6-yard box to just head it in. That was a beautiful play.
Yeah, it was. This kid, I don't know if we talk about him enough on this show. If we don't, well, we've got to start to talk about him a lot more than we already have, which I think is still a lot. Because he's got this extra motivation that says, no matter what the score line is, I'm going to play my best soccer. I'm going to try and be that playmaker that team needs. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that he's found this maturity that he interviewed him didn't have before when he was in Mexico. Yes, he probably still did, but kid, especially from way back then. So we've seen him grow. Goodness, he has grown into a fantastic player. He's won for MLS, especially even overseas to look at. because this kid can get really good for even an overseas team in, let's say, like their Division 2 or even 3.
I think he does have the potential, but he needs to prove. For example, I mean, he's good. I'm telling you, there's no doubt about it that he's good. But at least this season, he still wasn't considered pretty much a player to get minutes, even against NTX Rayados. He was the one that stayed on the bench, if you recall correctly, in that game. They don't know why, but they chose John Montaño over him.
Thing. That, to me, that's a good thing. NTX Rayados, that's a friendly. So you put those players that are questionable to stay on the team. That, well, yeah, basically the players that are questionable to put on that pitch. So him staying on the bench, to me, actually made a good sign.
In the Open Cup?
Basically like one of our starters.
Yes. In the RGV side of things, and yeah, it's a good thing that he didn't play because he would be fresh for the weekend. But in his mind, the fact that Wilmer Cabrera says, even against an amateur team, the fact that he didn't even get at least 5 minutes, and John Montaño did. Look where John Montaño is right now. You know, for him, it's more like the lines of like, I really need to try harder for next year. If I want, like, he said it before. He said it on our show. He said, my main focus is to make sure that the Dynamo take a look at me as a viable future MLS player. And for him, it probably wasn't good a good sign that John Montaño got minutes and he didn't. I'm looking at it in his point of view. You know, he's a player that's always hungry. And I'm not talking about the watermelon. I'm talking about soccer hungry, guys. I just had to bring in the watermelon. It's just hilarious, the watermelon. The point is, until he catches and fills the eye of Wilmer Cabrera, to at least have him play a couple of minutes in Open Cup, then I can say, okay, he's a viable option to maybe go overseas. Until then, he's still a quality USL player that still got a lot of room to grow. So I just wanted to say that because I feel like sometimes it might not help if we overhype him too much, even though we're really hyping because he deserves it. But I think I just don't want to overhype him and let it get to his head. You know how coach is in regards to mentality wise from his players. So we're looking out for you, Chuy. If you're listening, we're looking out for you, man.
Actually, I want to say this. I got the games mixed up. When you said NTX Rayados, I thought of the friendly back at HEB Park against the Mexican League team. So that was my bad. Yes. Yeah, for him not to get those minutes over there, that made him the player that he is right now. I think if he gets minutes and shows that he was only okay, he'd be in the same boat as the players that just got cut. So, in my opinion, that is totally fine. That it finally, it showed that he now is because of that. And now, in my opinion, he will get noticed next year by RGVFC Houston Dynamo, because there are players, especially for Houston, to look out for down here. We've talked about it before. And he's probably going to be one of them.
And think about it this way. You bring up a good point, and then I'm kind of playing devil's advocate on myself here, with the fact that Aldo Quintanilla played. He played, I believe, the 90 minutes in that match. Where's it? Not counting the injury, pre-injury, Aldo Quintanilla was nowhere to be seen. You know, at least in Aldo Quintanilla's mind, or I don't know, but what I'm trying to say is that it was a little bit more negative, the fact that Aldo Quintanilla played 90 minutes with Houston Dynamo for X and Y reason. But after the Open Cup match, Aldo Quintanilla wasn't the same. And then the injury happened, and so he was gone for a while in that. But before that, you can say, oh, maybe it's because the wingers, obviously the whole offense was gelling, but I feel like what he showed was that some sort of desperation, and he kind of took this whole like, oh, I got the dynamo, like I want more, but he kind of might have taken it the wrong way. I'm not sure, but the point is, after that, we see a tale of two stories, right? Chuy Quintanilla, that's a banda singer. Chuy Enriquez, Aldo Quintanilla. Aldo Quintanilla gets 90 minutes against NTX Rayados. After that match, he stopped scoring. He had already scored 4 before that match, right? Then he just stopped scoring. Chuy Enriquez, on the other hand, yes, he didn't play against Houston with the Houston Dynamo. Yes, he had been benched for a while, many times. But the difference is, he used all of that motivation for him to do better. He only had, I believe, at that point of the season when we played NTX Rayados, he only had 1 goal, and I believe it was the one against Fresno. Where's he at right now? He's at 5 as well. He's tied with Aldo Quintanilla. So there's a mentality issue right there, in which why Chuy Enriquez, why we also hype him, is because he's got the right mentality that a soccer player needs, especially a young one, in order to succeed in soccer. He needs to have that hunger for himself. He always keeps on pushing himself. Yes, I have 5 goals. He always says, I could do better. And coach knows that he can do better. And coach is always there to push him and mentor him and to not settle down and to always get some more. Why? Just like we see it, he sees it. And he sees them every day in practice. So he sees a lot more stuff about Chuy Enriquez that he can be better, and because he can be a really good player that can help the Toros, but more importantly, in the Dynamo organization, can be a future for Dynamo first team. So I wouldn't be surprised that if he does stay next season, he might start getting some more minutes with the Dynamo in Open Cup.
Of course, that's if the Dynamo want to do that in Open Cup, because as we did see this year, the fans and play the starters and look at where it's led us to, which is the finals.
But think about it. I mean, against amateur teams, why are you going to risk your starters? I mean, just use a couple of starters.
I see it.
And
yeah,
that's
the first.
Mm-hmm, yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what they did against NTX Rayados, because I believe that was the first round we entered in Open Cup, correct?
It was, of course, and normally the first round will be against those amateur opponents. Of course, the second round is where it starts to get a bit tougher. Yes, you may play a USL team. First, yeah, then it's up to you. Yeah. You're getting technically into more professional level teams than amateur teams that mainly only play at a soccer complex.
Yeah, because last year we played against North Carolina, which is at that time it was NASL, and we used Toros players and French players that in that match. Charlie Ward, Eric Bird, George Malky, Kevin Garcia, Ruben Luna played against North Carolina. The next step, the next round, they played Sporting Kansas City at home at BVA Compass Stadium, and they've tried to follow the same recipe. Like you said, they weren't really paying giving a lot of importance to the Open Cup, and we were eliminated by Sporting Kansas City in last year. This year, we played against an amateur team, NTX Rayados, with second stringers and US. But from then on, it was just like mostly starters, and I think we'll kind of see that formula as time goes on. and it helps. It also helps the Toros. What was our biggest complaint last year? Well, the Dynamo's taking the all our players, because what happened? Yes, Open Cup is during the week, but because of fitness issues, because of the traveling from Houston to RGV, the fact that they played matches, they weren't going to be match fit by the time the weekend came. And so he had to play second stringers and third stringers sometimes in USL play. I mean, how many times did we lose Charlie Ward? And he didn't play with the Toros because of that, because he played with the Dynamo. And so I think that's another plus. That's another light in the tunnel, you can say, for RGVFC, is that because the Dynamo are going to be taking the Open Cup a little bit more seriously, then they're really not going to be grabbing a lot of our players, number one, and number two, if they do, maybe some of them will not see some minutes, because they're going to focus on putting in the second stringers or the Dynamo starters playing against the competition in the U.S. Open Cup. Now, the big question is what's going to happen with CONCACAF Champions League. That's another big issue. If we do get CONCACAF Champions League, this roster is pretty much thin. So there's that other side of the spectrum with that. Yes, if we don't win the Open Cup, they're gonna be putting it the seriousness on it next year, because they'll want to win it. Because there's gonna be that little thing like, we were so close but we didn't win it, but we want to win it. But if they do win it, then you have MLS to take care of, you have the Open Cup, and you also have to take care of CONCACAF Champions League. So what are you going to give your priority? Obviously, you're going to want to give priority to MLS and CONCACAF Champions League too. So where are you going to have your starters? Where are you going to want to put your starters? CONCACAF and MLS. Which means that if the Dynamo make it to CONCACAF Champions League, we might run into the possibility for the next year. They're going to have to use, with Open Cup, they're going to have to use Toros players and the third stringers for the Dynamo. Which means that this organization is really going to have to plan. There are two rosters accordingly for that extra tournament that the first team is going to be playing. I don't know. Does that mean getting players from Laredo Heat? Maybe. Does that mean getting players that are ready from Brazos Valley Cavalry? Maybe. Marcelo Palomino? Maybe. It all depends on what Gabriel Brenner wants and what Coach Cabrera and Matt Jordan decide are going to do in the offseason. There's a lot of variables here. And yes, this is an RGVFC podcast, but the reason we talked about the Dynamo so much in this team, because don't forget, they are the ones that control our destiny, per se, on the pitch. And so whatever happens to the first team is going to affect the second team. So I'm not trying to be we're not trying to be little David Downers or anything. I mean, we're trying to hype up the next season is going to be better. And I can assure you it is going to be. But we also have to prepare with these what ifs. What if the Dynamo win the Open Cup and make it to CONCACAF Champions League? We have to be prepared for that. Coach Echeverri has to be prepared for that. The Dynamo have to be prepared for that. Laredo Heat and Brazos Valley Cavalry have to be prepared for that, because they're going to have to move around the rosters and their personnel, to try to alleviate this problem with roster depth. So, exactly, Cisco.
Just, like you said, it's. Yeah, we expect next season to be better than this season, because that's all that we really want from this club is moving up. But we also have to face the music. We have to face reality that speed bumps like the Open Cup again. And if we end up winning, of course, the Open Cup this coming Wednesday, well, guess what? You said we've got now the CONCACAF Champions League, and course, they put in the starters, but where does that leave the starters for the Open Cup? Oh, wait. Be playing B team, but the B team is also going to be pulled their sister team, which is RGVFC. Boom, you get those players, you put them into that Open Cup. So it's just going to be that way. This is how this club was technically meant for. It's sad to say, we'll have this crazy year just like we did the first year, but most likely, with all that still happening, we will probably make the playoffs in the USL next year, and that's going to be great. Why do I think that?
Yeah.
There's transfers, American transfers to, of course, the actual transfer window.
And this is why it's important.
Yeah.
And this is why it's important for RGVFC, and we kind of saw a little bit of it this season, in which you had Coach Echeverry rotating the squad, making sure the second stringers and the third stringers would get some minutes as well. Whether it's Wilmer Cabrera Jr., what's his brother's? David Cabrera, Team Monday, Guillermo Delgado at the time. You know, bringing in these players and making sure that we're match fit, and I think this is what they're trying to do, is making sure that yes, we have your good starters, but we're also making sure that our second and third stringers kind of have some decent match fitness that way the disparity between first stringers and second stringers isn't too great. That when the Dynamo need our first stringers, we suffer in USL, and I think at least in in defense, I think we're decent in that regard. Because I think there's competition in all positions. Left back, you have Manny Padilla and you have Kai Green. We already talked about goalkeeper. Center back positions, Connor Donovan, Kyle Adams, Omar Ontiveros, Robert Castellanos. So you got one extra per position. Out on the right, you have, on the left, Sheldon Sullivan, Derek Luke, he can say even though he hasn't played. So that one might be an issue, at least for this year, as far as depth-wise. Because obviously, you can put in Kyle Adams, but he's a center back. So there's kind of a little iffy right there, but I'm pretty sure we'll find somebody decent. And hopefully Victor Garza might be back next year. That's another plus. We'll see how his rehabilitation continues to go through. Actually, I was thinking, I think it might be a good idea. Maybe sometime in the future we can have Victor Garza on the show to talk about everything from. But we'll talk about that after when we finish the show. But continuing on, and you have in the middle you have Todd Warden, Nico Perea. I'm sorry. Nah, I didn't mean that. Jorginho James. And that's it. So there's another position that, we might need some more depth there. The center defensive mid. Out in the wings, you have Chuy Enriquez. You have Carlos Small. You can also put in Victor Garza there. Bryce Marion. That one seems decent. You might want to bring one extra one. Oh, actually, we did have Camilo Monroy. Camilo Monroy is back. So there's some depth for next season. Well, obviously, you have Matias Alivar and Pablo Aguilar fighting for a spot. And then up on top, you have Carlos Small, who, by the way, Carlos Small, like I said, can also play a winger. So there's another piece of depth right there. But you can have up on top Carlos Small and Aldo Quintanilla. Maybe bring in one more just for safety purposes. Because Tim Monday is like kind of iffy on him, and we already got rid of Guillermo Delgado. So, and I know I'm missing a couple other players that haven't gotten much minutes. Oh, obviously we're talking about Wilmer Jr. and David Jr. David Jr. I believe David Cabrera plays as center mid. Don't quote me on that, but as far as depth, I think we're good in that regard. We just need to get some more players that will kind of even out the disparity between first stringers and second stringers.
Sure, we've got the depth, and of course, on even the Houston Dynamo side, let's also look at that because that can pull of players for RGVFC. Look at the left back situation and especially the right back situation too. This year, yeah, it was scarce, but I believe next year we'll have basically everyone back. Dynamo, so that really helps with, of course, their defense because I think that's what really lacked this year with the team is why they were technically struggling. So you look at that, maybe close to 6 players, so that's almost 3 on each side for the defense. So we wouldn't really have to worry about back situations too much.
So
that's a
So I have a quick before we go on break because we're gonna have to bring in our guest speaker, our guest for tonight, which is Ed Salas. Before we go on break to bring him on, there's a question that Cisco put on the chat, and I really would like for you to answer. He says, "Which of the first team players do you all maybe see as a potential preseason camp invitees for the Dynamo, and maybe even sign a contract?"
Well, I mean, invitees for sure. I don't think that they'd sign a contract, but I'd see the likes of maybe Bryce Marion, for sure Chuy Enriquez, and get that opportunity that we talked about before. And maybe of course, since I would see a couple of them to get maybe just a little camp invitee because obviously their father is head coach. So, of course, if they could just... Obviously, I'd like to see the whole team get invited just so that we knew that they throughout this off season. But most likely that won't happen. So a couple of players, just like I said, most likely the like Bryce Marion, Chuy Enriquez, and even our keepers. And
so here,
brothers, or at least one of them.
So here's my list: Todd Warden, Chuy Enriquez, Carlos Esmal. Well, it kind of depends on how the loan is during the off season. Because I think it was like 6 months. That's what the media was saying over there in Panama. So Todd Warden, Carlos Esmal, Chuy Enriquez. Kyle Adams.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Chuy Enriquez, Kyle Adams, Todd Warden, and Carlos Esmal. I see those 4 players as being invited over to camp. And Cisco, Kai Green had been invited. He had been practicing with the first team a couple of times, but I was hearing some stuff that it wasn't really what Wilmer was looking for in MLS. Maybe he develops better. Maybe he's given another opportunity. Maybe, but he has been called this season to practice with the first team, just like Connor Donovan. Connor Donovan is a given because he already has an MLS contract. So there's that. So we're going to go on a short break. When we come back, we're going to have Ed Salas, who is the marketing director of Texas Southmost College. We're going to be talking about the history of RGV professional soccer and soccer in general in the Rio Grande Valley. It's going to be an interesting discussion. So don't go away just yet. We will be right back. All right, guys. So welcome back to the second part of today's Down in the Valley episode. Once again, my name is Edson Ochoa, accompanied by my co-host Jacob Young. We Down in the Valley is a proud member of the Beautiful Game Network USL family of USL podcast. So, like I said before we went on break, we do have a special guest for tonight's episode, and so please everybody say hi to Ed Salas. Ed, how are you doing today?
Very good, Edson. Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. So, based on my research, so right now you are the marketing and public relations of Texas Southmost College, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So, we wanted to bring you on because we also knew, from our research that you used to work for the Rio Grande Valley Bravos back when they were playing in Valley View.
Right. Yes, I was.
So my first question to you is, what was your philosophy in how to run the team? Because from what I recall, back in those times, 2009, the 2009 season, you could say that the RGV Bravos were very successful, not only on the pitch but off the pitch as well.
Right. No, that's a correct assessment. They were very successful on both ends.
And what was it? Because well, first of all, what position did you hold with that organization?
VP of Operations and Communication.
Okay. All right, excellent. And so I'm assuming that you had to deal with the media. You had to deal obviously with the public relations on this whole team. What was the biggest? How do you explain the relationship between team and media?
Between the team and media, it was very friendly. Very friendly. I mean, the team had a good relationship with the media, with the fans. Very fan friendly, very media friendly.
What was the key to that good relationship between them? What was it exactly that you and the team did as an organization in order to make sure that there was a good relationship with the fans and the media?
Well, it's basic public relations, media relations. You have to let them be available to the fans. You have to let them be available to the media, accommodate the media, and be upfront with them. And that's pretty much how it was. The team was 80% players homegrown from the Valley. Mm-hmm. So, they were from here. They knew a lot of people around here. The parents, the families came out. They knew, the media knew some of these players even when they were playing back in high school and maybe even before that. So that helped a lot. And then the PR and the marketing that we did to make sure that the media had access to the players and the players would be available for the media.
I really agree with everything that you said. I mean, and we noticed. I mean, when back in that time, my best friend was a member of the supporters group, La Raza Brava, and from what I recall, with the original owners, it was a I guess you can say it was a good relationship between the supporters group and the team. And there was this sort of a connection where they felt that hey, the team cares about us, where to the point where they would make time out of their busy schedules to go to Laredo, to go and travel with the team and go support them, even in a hostile environment, such as Laredo when they played against Laredo Heat.
Right. I mean, it was a very open relationship with the team and the community. We had a lot of fans coming out that even followed the team up to Laredo and places like that. Even further up to Midland, which is over a 12-hour drive. So we had fans up in Austin as well. So I mean, we had a really good group of fans that followed us, and at times, it was like a little Mexican national team in a way, and how the Mexican national team is here in the United States. With you have a pro Mexican national team fan base.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times we were almost like the home team because of the amount of fans that would be following the team.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. But then, okay, so that was in 2009, and then 2010 came along. You had this abrupt announcement that the owners of the Bravos sold the team. I believe it was a nonprofit organization. I believe it was from either Corpus Christi or Galveston. I'm not sure exactly from where it was, but it was from outside of the Rio Grande Valley, and they moved the team to Brownsville. What happened? What happened there that made the decision to move them to Brownsville when everything was working so well in Valley View in central Rio Grande Valley?
Well, the team, basically folded, and then so another owner took over and moved it over to Brownsville because they gave Brownsville offered, a facility to play in as well as some other incentives to go over there. I really wasn't too privy on the details because I wasn't too involved with the newer club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I recall correctly, you did mention back in that day that there were some philosophical differences between you and the new owners in regards to that. Was it the way that they wanted to address your line of work? That was it completely different from what you were working on with the previous administration?
No, it was nothing like that. I mean, I'm not here to badmouth or
No. Mm-hmm.
talk about the other team and the ownership, and they just had different ideas on how they wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
And the style, everything from like the players, the style of play, and how they wanted to run the team, where that didn't go with the way my idea is for the club, or how it was planned, is more community based. Even though the team, we were able to help enough to be able to keep that community base in relationship to the players still being from the Valley, but it was looking to go further away from that team that played the year before, from what was built, and the philosophy was built on. So
Mm-hmm.
since it was going away from that, I mean, that's not something that was for me. I mean, it was for if it's for that ownership, it was fine. And that's pretty much it.
The reason I kind of ask is more along the lines is that what in your idea, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit. What is the key for a professional team, to succeed in the Rio Grande Valley? And you mentioned one key aspect, and that is having a lot of homegrown players, on your team, because that kind of helps the relationship between the community and the team, because they actually feel identified with this team. Like, hey, yes, this team it plays in the Rio Grande Valley, but it's also made up of players that I've played against, whether I've played with them in high school or in college, and so that creates 100% RGV identity. But from your experiences in this branch of marketing and PR, what else is the key for professional soccer to be successful in the Rio Grande Valley? I mean, we've seen in the future we had the Bravos, who pretty much was kind of one and done, if I recall correctly, and then with the Toros, it's kind of been pretty much stumbly. You can say it's been a rocky start in that aspect of creating an identity that is easily accepted by the Rio Grande Valley fan base.
Right. Yeah, I've noticed that as well. I think if you had the Bravos in the HEB part, I mean, you'd have pretty much a good combination of what you need to succeed.
That that is actually a fair point. I mean, to bring it, you said having the identity of the players, but so another question I wanted to bring up, because when the Toros were created, one of the things that the Dynamo mentioned about the Rio Grande Valley, why they chose the Rio Grande Valley to establish the team, was along the lines of that this is a hotspot of talent. Do you agree with this take on the Rio Grande Valley?
Oh, I totally agree. And you can see that by the success of the high school soccer teams here in the Valley and how many state championships they've won since 2004.
We have, I believe, who was it? Usually it's Valley View up there. You've had Hidalgo Pirates, Brownsville, Hannah, if I'm not mistaken, as well had made it far in the championship, if I recall correctly. And I know also Sherryland. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you have Brownsville Rivera, you have Brownsville Porter. I think there's been at least about 6 state championships, more or less. I may be missing one in there, maybe 2. But 4 of the 6 have been won by teams in Brownsville, Porter, Rivera, and Lopez. Over in the Upper Valley, Sherryland and Hidalgo have won state tournaments. So, I mean, from one side to the valley to the other, you have, a lot of talent.
So, okay, so following up on this question, because a lot of people ask, yes, in high school we're pretty much one of the best hotspots. Why is it that transition outside of high school? Why is it that our talent cannot continue and developing more RGV players that go into professional soccer or somebody that stands out in collegiate soccer?
I mean, one of the things that can be, there's several factors involved. It's not just one thing that determines that. It's almost like, folks that are, in college or going to school. I mean, there's a lot happening that, in life happens that maybe deviate them from their path. But that's one aspect. Another aspect is economics, in the sense of like where if you're in other parts of the country, you have this structure that is trying to be built here, and also trying to be, trying to take advantage economically as well of those players by building a structure similar to that you would have in Houston or Dallas. The difference is families in those areas are not as economically disadvantaged. They have more resources to be able to play in those soccer leagues, and you've got to pay to play in a way. So to do that here, that's not going to be able to nurture our players.
And it's a good thing you brought up that specific term, pay to play, because I mean in the last couple, especially when the U.S. did not make it to the World Cup for 2018, that term was brought up constantly, especially when we had the election U.S. soccer, pay to play, and I definitely is one of the things I've always agreed on. I mean, back when I was a kid, I had an uncle who pretty much created a team out of it was my cousin and a couple of his friends, but they were from like the La Jolla, they didn't have money in order to be in a specific academy, and yet this team would go to these tournaments hosted by these academies, by Atlas, by Border Bandits, Sun Devils, and they would beat them. And these are kids that had little to no money to develop, and I feel that's one of the things that's wrong with this country, the way they're handling sports. I mean, we understand that everything has a price, obviously, but I feel that because of this focus in earning revenue from creating these players, you're missing out on all the talent that is out there that can be better than the ones that are in the actual academies. But because they don't have or their families don't have the financial capabilities of paying $300, but it's probably more than $300, to be a part of an MLS academy or a USL academy or just a regular soccer academy in general. And I think due to also add to the fact that RGV is one of the poorest, or is considered one of the poorest regions in the whole United States. That's, I guess you can say that's pretty much the answer. What you're telling me, the answer to the question is why these players are succeeding, obviously in high school, but beyond, they don't have the capabilities to continue, and they have to go work. They have to go work in order to sustain families, or they go to college, but they weren't able to get, you can say, a scholarship to pay for that college education. So we lose all of this talent.
Right. And then there's also, some philosophies of the coaches themselves. Like, let's say if they do have the fortune to be able to get on a college team, right? If you talk about it in the Valley, then maybe the coaching idea is coming from a different area. A lot of the coaches aren't from here, and maybe they don't value the talent or the system that works for that type of player, for our type of players. If you just want to throw out an example of a style of play of, low to the ground, touching the ball, not so much a long ball in your typical 4-4-2 formation, very European. And now with everybody trying to think that you must be over 6 feet tall to play the game, I mean, I think it's already, we've gone through several World Cups and several Champions League to show that probably the best player on the pitch is under 5'6".
Mm-hmm.
And how many goalkeepers over 6'5"? He's already, gone through defenders and everything. And that's just one player. And there's several other examples of players like that. But I mean, if you talk about that just one ideology of a system of play, that's also is part of it. If they don't have that mentality, and if we go back to like the Bravos, that there was that mentality of how to be able to work with the players here to fit the system to what's best suited for them. And the team, as you know, they did very well. I mean, played against teams, the majority, all of them way taller than them, and they either matched up one-on-one to them or ended up defeating them.
Definitely agree with that. Jacob, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, not really at this time. Seems like you've been covering all the questions really well, Edson, because one question I'd have to ask, I know that we really don't want to get into this, but it's had to be asked, was the indoor soccer match for Tigres versus who they played, but how was that on your perspective?
What was that question for?
Oh, for you, Ed.
What was it? It was an indoor match for Tigres, or?
So basically, what he's asking about is how do you feel the organization handled this Tigres versus Chivas, or not? Was it the Atlas match? Coming in the perspective of somebody who has worked with marketing and PR.
I don't think well, because I mean the team was there, great, but it doesn't seem well because I think they changed the times, and they didn't let folks know, and I think there was low attendance for it. So it, I think a lot of fans lost out, and and that's a black eye on whoever organized it, whether it was the Toros or AC Park, or if there were promoters that were brought in from outside. I mean, that wasn't that great. It even goes back also to, there was also a Cruz Azul game in July that was on the promoters because, they didn't prepare for the amount of people that were there, and the system of ticketing or allowing people into the stadium was actually quite, they set themselves up for a dangerous situation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how, what they were thinking. Luckily, everything was okay. So, I mean, it's great that these soccer matches are coming down to the Valley, but I think it's almost, there's not too much thought being put into it.
Do you think that maybe this is me thinking out loud, and maybe this is they're taking an approach of like of a build it and they will come approach, or like, oh, like they're gonna come just because we brought in these two teams from Liga MX, knowing the fact that most of the fans in the Rio Grande Valley have their set Liga MX team that they follow and support.
Oh, I've seen that list. I've seen more fans going to these games just because they want to have access to a Liga MX game, right? So if you're a fan, whether if that's not your team or not, well, you'll go and support it for just to be able to see it live. However, also the thing that's a barrier for it is the amount that they charge for these games. Like I think there was something on the ticketing that also was a little funky, and I think that's on they're using the Toros system, which is also, I mean, it's not the greatest, and it's actually charges like I think there's some huge surcharges on there that you're thinking, well, for a match that you're already being charged like X amount of dollars, and then you still have to pay almost like 25% for a service fee. I think that'll keep people away too. And that wasn't just this game; it was also the other games that are too. I mean, you got to have some kind of ticketing system, sure, but I think it's gotten a little out of hand with how much they're charging per ticket. And then you don't really know where you're. And then I think even the map system is funky too. But I mean, those are just little details.
Yeah, it's just little. I guess the term I like to use, they're just some growing pains. But and it kind of leads back to your previous statement in regards, to the talent. But it also applies here, and you mentioned with the pricing. I mean, you're charging, I believe. Okay, so this match, I believe it was like 40 or a little bit more for the Tigres match. And yes, it was technically supposed to be included for both games with Tigres and the Toros. But going back to you were saying that this thing wasn't marketed properly, I was there, outside, of the stadium, people coming in, and I spoke to a couple of Tigres fans, taking pictures and things like that for the website I collaborate, and I mentioned to them like, hey, are you going to be staying for the Toros match, which is our local team, and they had no idea that there was going to be another game right after, and much less did they have an idea that the ticket that they bought for the Tigres match covered both games. So Ed, you do have a point that these games and the team have not been marketed correctly like they should have, and I feel that that's one of the things, like if they can just get that better, I think they can get that identity in that connection between fans and team. But I feel, and I don't know if this is something you agree with me on this, and I feel like the organization in some instances they're cutting corners, whether it's for budget reasons or extra reasons, or they don't know how to mark. I don't know, but I feel like they're cutting corners in a lot of things, and that's affecting them negatively more often than it does positively.
Right. I mean, I understand. In the end, it's a business. So I don't know how they're cutting corners or trying to like, let's say if it's the ticketing system, I don't know if they get any percentage of that. Typically, that goes to the ticket service, or a good chunk of that. So if they're cutting corners, maybe it's by not having their own ticketing service of their own that they have in house, and maybe that's how they might be cutting corners on that end. But when you have like you'd mentioned, the tickets that are so much, you could probably go to Mexico, and that's, I think, was some thought with a lot of the fans, or at least a certain amount of them. For that amount, I can just go over to Monterrey and watch an official match, as opposed to watching them, just pretty much just pass the ball around here, because they may not give as much effort, or they're gonna let their the bench players play most of the game instead of their starters, which is understandable. I mean, from if you're running a team and you're going to go play this friendly out there, well, you know what? I don't want to risk as much of my players. I'm going to put more of my subs in to play. So you don't get to see that. And let's say in this particular game, where they changed the time almost an hour, a lot of fans missed half of the game. So basically, when you get there, you're just watching the subs. So you pay over $50 for a ticket to see what a second team on the field, a B team.
Yeah.
So that takes away from it. And if that was the first experience for some fans that are going out to HEB Park or to get to know the Toros or whatever, then that's a negative experience. Most likely they're not going to want to go back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a couple things. I will say this about that game. If it's in that game in particular, what I'd say, like in my case, I happened to be there. Well, I don't know if it was paid for the price of admission, because I could have just waited outside for it. But were the fans. They made that game because they created an environment there in the stadium that was like being in Mexico. But from not in the stands, it's when we were walking out already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you had the Libres y Locos from RGV, you had the Libres from Houston, Dallas, from everywhere. And you saw it, like, even when they were coming into the stadium, they marched from the entrance of the actual parking all the way to the entrance, chanting with smoke bombs, flags. It's that atmosphere that it almost makes you feel, like you said, it makes you feel like you were in El Estadio Universitario, watching the Libres y Locos, do their whole thing. And I think that's something that needs to be replicated here, but that's a completely long process, and it takes, like we keep on mentioning, it takes the fact that there needs to be a connection between team and community. So do you have any final thoughts you want to talk to us about our RGV soccer in general that you might want the fans and the audience from down in the valley to know?
Well, if anything, then they should, support more their high school teams. That's one place that we have all this talent, and and it could be just life situations that they, not as much of the fans go to see the high school games. Although that has been changing too over the years. As before, it was pretty scarce in the stands, and I think it has to do with these state championships and they're creating, even the schools themselves create more of this community around these teams. You start seeing the stands fill up a little bit more for these high school games. So even if whether you have a family member that's playing and on a team or not, they're actually quite enjoyable to watch. You see some pretty good matches. They're very competitive. They're very fast. Sometimes I prefer the high school games here in the Valley to actually watching one on TV, just because of the sheer excitement and the talent that they have, the way they touch the ball. And when you think about it, these are 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, and they have all this talent, and you're seeing that on the field, how well they're playing and coordinating the game together. So it is a sight to see, and then it does it very dramatic too in these games. 3-2 games, 2-1s. You have a lot of clásicos here in the Valley, so it's exciting. So I would invite folks to take in a high school soccer game and give them your support.
When does the high school soccer season start?
That usually starts with tournaments in January.
Okay. So definitely, whether you are an alumni for McAllen Memorial, obviously Valley View, Sherryland, La Jolla, from wherever high school, or if you have a high school close to you, you might want to go and support the high school teams there, because they do bring very entertaining soccer, especially like he mentioned, when you're at the rivalries, when you have Mac High versus McAllen Memorial, the La Jolla, or and things like that. So. And you're not only supporting the high schools, you're also supporting the future talent that is being developed. And the more you support these athletic programs, these soccer programs in the high school levels, we might see the growth in it and a better opportunity for these kids to get noticed by soccer programs out there in NCAA to be more willing to spend and give them more scholarships and they have them go through the NCAA process. I think it's everything is just connected. Whether, like we always mention, support local, and yes, high school athletics, UIL athletics does count as local. So, starting January, guys, and I will try to make here in Houston. I will try to make find out. I believe I'm not sure if Shadow Creek Ranch has a local program, but be sure to support local soccer in that aspect as well. And I don't think the tickets are very expensive. And I mean, you're going to be entertained. I'll tell you that. I can tell you that for sure because I've gone to a couple of high school games back when my cousin was a member of La Jolla High School, and it does get really really entertaining. So. Once again, Ed, thank you so much for your time and talking to us here with Down in the Valley. We really appreciate it, and you brought in a really good perspective on how RGV soccer has grown, what needs to be done in order for it to make it better. Honestly, we all would really appreciate it. It kind of helps understand why things are being run that way, why things were run that way when it came to the Bravos, the Grandes, and right now with the Toros. So if anybody's interested in following you, where can they find you?
I'm sorry, what was that? You cut out.
Where can they find you on Twitter? If anybody from any of our followers would like to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
On social media, let's see. You can find me on Twitter.
What's your Twitter handle?
That's a very good question because I usually just open the thing up and it shoots it out. Give me a quick sec here. So you go to Ed Chernko.
Okay. All right, guys. So I will be sharing his Twitter handle on Twitter. So you guys are interested in what he talks about with marketing and RGV soccer. You can give him a follow. Once again, thank you so much, and have a good night. I hope we can have you once on the show back again.
All right. Thanks a lot, Edson. Thanks for the invitation.
No problem. Good night. All right, guys. So that was our interview with Ed Chernko Salas, who like I said, he is the director of marketing and public relations at Texas Southmost College. But like it came out as well, he also was very close with professional soccer in the Rio Grande Valley with the RGV Bravos. So we saw that perspective, how RGV Bravos differed in the way they handled their marketing, in order to build the connection between fans and community back when the Bravos were in town. And how, you guys can probably see from what we talk about in the previous episodes of the show to what he talked about the Bravos, where the difference is and why maybe the Toros is having a difficult time, getting fans out to the stadium. And I think the biggest thing that I got out of it, and I think he has a really good point, is the fact that with the Bravos, we had a lot of homegrown talent. Because of the way that the Dynamo handle this team, we don't have the luxury of being able to have a team that is 100% or 90% homegrowns, so there's a little give and taker there. And I think the RGV talent, if they're really interested in going pro, now we have the opportunity. Back with the Bravos, this was the USL PDL team. Yes, they had their tryouts, but a lot of the players, if I recall correctly, especially with the Grandes, a lot of the players played with TSC or played with UTB or UTPA at that time. And so because they were playing in NCAA, they couldn't get paid, so and things like that. So and that's why they relied a lot more on that. This time with this organization, you have a team that's got you can say a lot more funds in order to bring in players that that they pay. And so a lot of times, so they grab them from college and the draft. So that's why you don't see a lot of players. So it kind of leads up to that. The players, they go a lot. They go a lot out there to the tryouts, to open tryouts. I'm not sure 100% like what the numbers usually are. I might have to ask around. That go and try out for the Toros or for the Dynamo or whatever. Most of them don't make it. I think Omar Ontiveros went through the process and he was able to make it in. What was I missing? I think so far it was just Brandon. No, not Brandon Morales. Omar Ontiveros, because Omar Ontiveros did actually do the tryout. He's from FAR, so he went through the tryouts, and based on those tryouts, they said, hey, you know what? He's good enough for the first team, and they got him. But it all leads down to the point. So they do good in college, in high school, I mean, but a lot of times, let's face it. I mean, a lot of times we don't make really great decisions when we're young, especially in the Rio Grande Valley. But that's a completely different story. The point is, a lot of them, because of that, and because also, like he mentioned, financial capabilities. A lot of these talented players don't go to college, much less have money to pay in order to go and get into an academy. And so we lose these players because a lot of them decide to become welders or work in the rigs or whatever, earn money, get a job to earn money to sustain themselves and sustain their family. And so they can't really think about, I love soccer, but I can't go pro because everything's pretty much against us in a way that gives us a good opportunity to make it pro, which, by the way, in and of itself is already difficult enough to begin with. But you have, the fact that you can't pay, you don't have the financial capabilities to pay for it. We lose that talent from the Rio Grande Valley, and so I think there needs to be a balance to make it. Now that the Toros are there, kind of make it more accessible for our young talent from high school. I mean, if they don't want to play in college, make it an opportunity to, hey, you know what? I mean, if you want, we can find a way you can get some hours, some credit hours at STC or at UTP or UTRGV. So you can get a degree, but also if you're good enough, be able to play soccer professionally and support your hometown. I think, like he said, the more players from the Valley that we have on our roster, I think it'd be a bigger opportunity for the fan base to become identified with this team as 100% organically a Rio Grande Valley team. Cisco, when I said that, I meant along the lines of like players that are homegrowns that are from the Rio Grande Valley. Yes, Aldo did go through the tryouts, but he is not from the Rio Grande Valley. Jacob?
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point with all of that, saying that you can find a way. It's basically only in dreams, and why I say that is just because of how strict the NCAA is. Can go back to the NCAA with, yes, that soccer thing, and of course players not to a certain degree, especially out of not having the money to go to college, just like you said, because of not also getting scholarship opportunities and things like that. That means that they just weren't that good in high school. And B, yes, if they really did want to continue their career, take money, would all go back to the NCAA to where that.
And that is actually a really good point. But the thing still stands is that I think it's also, and I kind of hinted about it before, and I've mentioned it many times as well, is that sometimes it's also a mentality issue, and I think that's what Coach Echeverry also is very key of, and he has a point, is that yes, you may be good talent. How many times have you said this? You may be good as talent wise, but if you don't have the mentality to back up that talent, you're no good to me.
That's basically like his go-to saying in a way, as like his catchphrase, because I think I've heard him say it almost each time that we've interviewed the man after a game, be off the record or on the record, but I do hearing him say that so many times because that fact is, or not fact, but fact, because that's so, it's, everything can go back to, because I mean, I've even seen it in high school as well. If you're not making the grades, but you have the skill, guess what? That's a mindset. That means that you're kind of immature and you don't really care for one thing, so you're kind of immature.
That is true, and I mean that's one of the requisites in UIL. I mean, you have to have a minimum grade in your classes to be able to be eligible to play. And if you're failing, then what good are you for the team? Even if you're like the Messi of the Rio Grande Valley to this team, let's say McAllen Memorial, because we're both from there. But what good does it do if your star player is failing? You know, and what does that mean? It means that they're not focused. They don't have the maturity, the mental maturity to. Okay, yes, I mean, I love soccer and I love and I'm on the team, but I do also have the bigger responsibility of doing good in school, academic wise. And if your priorities aren't straight, what makes you and you don't learn your lesson at that point, what good are you going to be to be a professional when there's a lot more responsibilities than just classes and playing? And you're talking about being able to manage your time wisely, being able to manage your image, you name it. It's a lot more important decision making out there in the future, out there in the real world, than just do my homework or play soccer. And I think a lot of times that's also a big issue in that a lot of players are like, oh yeah, I want to play soccer and you're good, but then they're the ones that are skipping classes, flunking classes, you name it. And I'm pretty sure people that have been in high school and know people that have been, not just soccer, football, band, you name it, volleyball, basketball. You always know somebody that's really good, but doesn't really pay attention and do good in their classes. So that's another thing that I definitely agree on that take that you had, Jacob. And that really is a good point. So we talked about that. And we are 10 minutes away from ending this show. So just real quickly, talk about this Saturday's match against Seattle Sounders 2, or I guess now you can call them Tacoma Sounders for now, until they actually officialize their name for next season. So we're playing against Tacoma Sounders 2 on Saturday. We're playing at home at HEB Park. What are your thoughts on this match?
Since of course playoffs, and I don't necessarily know exactly which. Actually, let me look up where Seattle Sounders. Technically, if you were to search them up from Google, that's what you would find, not Tacoma Sounders. So I believe that they'd be in playoff contention or somewhere around there as well.
Nope. They're in 16th.
Okay, 16th. So it's a battle of last place, basically. Of course, RGVFC has swooped their way into 14th. That's still not great because there's 17 teams in the West. Mm-hmm. Just another proving game, especially for players that haven't really proved themselves this year and can prove themselves for even Houston Dynamo, like the likes of Trey Enriquez, Kai Green. Is he going to be with next season because of the whole doesn't he fit from Wilmer Cabrera's? Basically, we're going to find out a lot about this team of who's really going to end up staying this offseason and who's either going to get so I was going to say kicked off the team, but really they're just going to get cut from the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's basically what these last two games are going to be. And so that's what I do expect to see who has the most fight and who's really wants to stay on this squad to have a chance for Houston.
So, I'm bringing up my handy dandy transfer market. There we go. Transfer market, Rio Grande Valley. So here's an interesting thing. So Seattle Sounders, the last 5 games they have played, they tied 1-1 against St. Louis FC. They tied 1-1 against Orange County SC over there in Tacoma. They tied 4-4 against the Roughnecks at Tacoma. Lost 3-0 to Sacramento Republic. Lost at home against Phoenix Rising FC 1-0. So you're talking about three straight draws, and 2 losses. And so going into my favorite thing, even though a lot of people don't really agree if this even should be even mentioned, but our record against Seattle Sounders 2, we have played them 5 times. We have won 3 times, drawn once, and lost once. At home, we have won twice, drawn 0 times, and lost 0 times. So every time that the Seattle Sounders comes to HB Park, or in the case of, I think it was at the practice fields. Hold on.
I remember both of those games really well because I think that was one of my first games. I've actually got the ticket stubs still from the practice game, and I recall that the ref was just horrendous. As in, I do recall this really good memory because it's so cool because it was basically like you were on the pitch with the players. Seattle Sounders player that was on the ground for I don't even know how long. Yes, of course, it's up to the ref to call it, but the ref never called the game for a little pause to get the trainers off.
Yeah.
So he was on the sidelines just like waiting and called that when we were up. I think that was when we had not been scored on during that game. And then, of course, when they came to HEB Park when it was finally made, that game was really that was a game that RGVFC fought.
That was the match, if you recall correctly, where Jorginho James scored a screamer from midfield.
Yes.
And it was snubbed, and it was snubbed from goal of the week contention because that was also Didier Drogba's debut week in the USL. And he had scored a goal. So we've played them twice at home. You recall correctly, in 2016, we beat Seattle Sounders 6-0. And then last year, we beat them 3-1 at HB Park. And so talking about all of this, the history, that when we've played against Seattle Sounders 2, we looked at their record. What is your prediction for this match?
I think considering how well RGVFC has been playing, of course, we don't know who's really going to be down with RGVFC from players are going to be. Of course, there might be a Chris Seitz, but we still don't know that until, obviously, if I had to guess, the day of or tomorrow if we see anything from these Instagram or Chewy's or whoever's.
Yeah.
So prediction would be probably a solid victory from RGVFC. I think that Seattle will get either an early or late goal, and that's what the final score will be, 2-1.
2-1. I think my prediction is going to be 3-0. I think
prediction.
in this game, the team's going to be on fire. I think that Carlos Small is going to get a much needed goal out of this. Chuy Enrique is going to score another one. And I am going to say that Pablo Aguilar is going to score the third one. If he plays, I just have the feeling. I think he's another player that he deserves a goal. But yeah, 3-0 for me for this match. And going forward for the Toros, they're visiting Reno 1868. Watch out for flying water bottles over there. They receive Fresno FC on the 29th. So we play the 22nd this Saturday. We play against Seattle Sounders too. Wednesday we play at Reno, and then next Saturday, the 29th, for our last match of our last home match of the season, we host Fresno FC, and then we travel to Tulsa to face up the Roughnecks on the 6th, and on the 13th we visit San Antonio FC, and hopefully we can at least recover some of that dignity that we lost in the match in the last South Texas Derby. But I think for the rest of the season, I think it's just pretty much like it's said many times that we're just going to be playing spoiler. And I think the biggest satisfaction would be for me that Rio Grande RGVFC would spoil San Antonio's chances of making it to the playoffs. I think that'd be just glorious, because I know there's a lot of San Antonio fans that are gloating right now and kind of making it that it's certain that they're going to make it to playoffs, when in reality, they're more out. They're in playoff position, but there's a lot of fierce competition in the bottom, and if they're not careful, they might lose they might lose their ability to be going into playoffs. But if it does happen, it's just going to be just glorious for me, especially that I'm probably going to be making the trip over there. So it's going to be interesting. Just, I know we're, like we said in the beginning of the show, yes, we're out of the playoffs, but there's a lot of positives that can be taken out of this team. And as long as we continue to build on it, I think we should be fine for next season. So, Jacob, any last words you want to talk about, before we sign off?
No, not really. Just, you basically said it all with the last thought there, because that there's so much positive that can be brought from this. By the end of the season, we're gonna know who's most likely going to stay, which is fantastic. And we've talked about it so much last year at this time. We knew what was going to happen to this team. Are we even going to have any players to root for next year? And so, and we can see that most likely a lot of things are going to go up. Of course, yes, reality will set in. Fans, of course, we can only hope and kind of know that things are going to go up. And as media, yes, reality will set in. There's still ways around that. So it's going to be good.
So don't lose your faith, guys. Keep on going to the stadium. We know there's a lot of things that need to be worked on. We talked about it today with Ed Salas. But like I said, I can assure you that they are looking into all of that, and we're looking to fix it. And it's a slow process, but, and I cannot stress this enough, it takes both sides. It takes the organization, and it also takes an effort from the fans in order to make this team great and take it to the level where you want it to be. I mean, it's not all the work has to be on the organization. The fans have to do their part as well, and I think people need to understand that that just because things aren't going great, just by the fact that you're abandoning this team, does nobody a favor. Support local. Be sure to let your voice be heard, but don't. I can't stress this enough as well. Don't be offensive. I mean, we all have things that we know that aren't doing great in this organization. But there are ways to voice that opinion. But being offensive to the community manager, offensive to players, the families of the players, offensive to other fans, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to do anything good. In the end, it makes you look bad, and the people are going to stop taking your maybe what is a valid concern. They're not going to take it seriously. So that's all I'm going to say for the end of the show. So excuse me, been a long day. So be sure to check out downintheRGV.com. That's where we have our articles, wallpapers, galleries from the show or from the matches. Thank you, Cesar, who is our photographer, Cesar Cortez, our official Down in the Valley photographer. Be sure to also check out the articles that I write. Also check out Last Word on Soccer, which is where Jacob writes his articles on RGVFC. Also check out BGN Written. That's where Ray, our correspondent and friend, who, by the way, happy birthday to Ray. I know he was busy today with work, but guys, go to Twitter at cardpicker86 and wish Ray a happy birthday. I think he's done a lot of work for this podcast, a lot of work to bring you coverage and bring you his thoughts on this team. I think he deserves a little love from the RGV fan base. So be sure to go to at cardpicker86, wish him a happy birthday from us. Also, be sure to check out our friends at the Beautiful Game Network. Without their help, our podcast would not be possible to be on Google Play Store, iTunes, Stitcher. So be sure to support them as well. Be sure to check out all the other USL podcasts that are, there's a lot of quality there. So I can assure you of that. So be sure to check them out as well. Also check out Down in the Valley Gaming. We just uploaded on yesterday morning. We uploaded part 1 of the cross country race on the Crew 2. That was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Oh man, that was a ton of fun. Of course, yeah. Man, far senses of direction ever get even worse than that, then it's going to be even more of a challenge.
So think of it as guys. Think of it as like you're trying to get there as fast as you can from New York to Los Angeles with only your navigation, but you cannot use take me to this direction. All you see are the streets that are next to you, and you have to rely on your wits to make sure that if you make this turn, it takes you towards Los Angeles and doesn't take you over to Tampa like it happened to you.
Exactly, yeah. Took me over to actually Miami and around there, and I was like, oh crap, that's not good. So I had to turn back around and find a main road, and luckily I did after a long time in the woods, because I thought, oh, a car could drive through grass at a fast speed.
So
that did not happen.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun recording it. It got really, really, really tight as we got nearer to the end, and so be sure to, when part 2 comes out, be sure to check that out to see who won the race. No spoilers, please. Cisco says, y'all drive around New York forever. I'm not gonna lie to you, Cisco. I believe it took us 10 minutes just to get out of New York. And it took
us around that long.
Yeah, and it took you. Cisco's is like, Edson, when you made it to Dallas, I knew when you made a wrong turn because I used to live there, and I was screaming at. Yeah, dude, I accidentally took the loop, and it.
Oh, you took the loop.
Yeah, I took the loop, and I was like, and I went right next to the. It's not. I think it's the retention tower. I think that's what it's called. Cisco, correct me if I'm wrong, and I went right next to it. And the reason I recognized this was when I made the trip to Dallas to see the South Texas, or not South Texas, the Texas Derby. I was there with my family. We went sightseeing there, so I recognized that instantly. And once I saw when next to the reunion tower, thank you. When I went next, I was like, yeah, this was the wrong turn. But but yeah, guys, be sure to check it out. Be sure to check out all our other videos, whether it's the Crew 2, Grand Theft Auto 5, Rocket League as well. And we're actually going to be recording a lot more videos as well, guys. I'm going to make some upgrades to my PC, which means that there's going to be a lot more streams that we're going to be doing with gaming. So be sure to also follow Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Down in the Valley Gaming. So be sure to follow us there. Follow us on Twitch, and that way you'll get a notification when we do go live. And if you guys want to, you can subscribe to us. So if you guys are more familiar with YouTube gaming or YouTube in general, when you subscribe, you don't pay for anything, but you can also sponsor, and you pay, I think it's like $4.99 a month, and that money goes to the content creator. So in Twitch, you follow, it's like a subscribe in YouTube, and when you subscribe, you pay that monthly fee that goes directly and supports the content creator. So if you have the financial means to do it, we'd really appreciate if you guys can subscribe to us on Twitch to help bring a lot more content. Also, be sure to give us your ideas on what you want to see on Down in the Valley Gaming. I know there's a couple of games that Callow gave me free on Steam that I really would be really cool to try out on a video to see how it is. And we also have pending that bus video game that you told us about last time, the one with the 24 hours. That
8 hours actually.
8 hours.
Yeah.
That would actually be a very good streamable game, and it would have to be on the weekend and see if we can make it to the 8 hours. I think that'd be fun.
Exactly. People it would be podcast in itself as well, so that would be cool as well. Like everyone basically, because the cool part is if you're friends with people on that game at that time, you can fill up the bus to the maximum
Capacity.
Of course, capacity. Yeah, if let's say everyone's in the Discord, talking and just sharing things, and as the ride goes for 8 hours. Yes.
Yeah, and also we are planning to do something on Xbox One with FIFA Pro Clubs. So if you guys have an Xbox One or you're interested in joining our Pro Clubs team, which is with Generation Orange and Down in the Valley Gaming, be sure to contact me for that, and that we will, as we get more details settled with that, we can let you know what's gonna happen, so we can create a Pro Clubs team with all just fans of Generation Orange, Down in the Valley Gaming, and we will be representing RGVFC Toros. So I think that'd be a fun little thing, and another thing that can help you guys know us better, as well as know us to know you all better. So be sure to keep that in mind. And until next time, we'll see you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Actually, hold on. Next week, we're having the live show at HEB Park on Saturday. So, guys, we will more than likely be on the south side of the stadium transmitting live from HEB Park. So if you guys want to go and say hi, you're more than welcome to. We greatly appreciate it if you guys go out there and say hi. Bring your friends, bring your family, and let's talk toros. we're going to be opening up, the discussion for you all between the time that you guys are going to be let in on the stadium, which is around 5:30, till before kickoff, which is 7:30. So we have 2 hours to talk about the Toros. Give us your thoughts live on the stadium on HB Park. What did you think of the season? What in your thoughts could be done better? What in your thoughts think the organization in and of itself to get the fan experience better? Could they have done better that they can fix for next season? Let us know all of your thoughts. Be sure to join us on next Saturday, at the south side of the stadium and talk Toros with us. The invitation's out there for y'all. So be sure to go out there, be loud, be proud, and cheer on your Toros to victory that game against Fresno. So having said all of this, I think it's time for us to say goodbye. And we'll see you next week, next Saturday. And like always, #WeAreToros, #Somos Toros, and siempre fiel. Take care, guys.